Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Leadership and Politics with Dr. Abraham. On the show with us, we have a special guest for you, Miss Margie Warrell, a world-renowned thought leader, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and a humanitarian. She will share with us her insights on courage, bravery, and how to overcome self-doubts. These are very exciting topics. So join me and let's welcome Miss Margie Warrell.
Here we are.
Here you go. Hey. Nice to see you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Well.
Thank you for taking the time to give us your insight and share the insight with our audience. So I'm very much appreciating what you are doing in this time, especially in this difficult time. What I'd like to do is to introduce you to our audience by providing a brief biography of what you've done. The purpose of this show is to highlight and spotlight your achievement, the thought leader, in what they do. You as a thought leader, you have contributed a lot to the science of leadership. So here is just a humble contribution to what you've done. You were grew up in Australia, Victoria, Australia. You studied psychology and also business administration marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Recently, advanced congratulations to a PhD, upcoming PhD, but recently you achieved a milestone by obtaining your candidacy for doctorate.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to lead eventually to a PhD, which I understand how hard it is. So congratulations on that. And I would like to be the first one to call you Dr. Margie.
That's going to be exciting. That's going to be quite a milestone and probably a little bit strange, but also wonderful when that happens next year, I'm guessing.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. You write for Forbes. You're an expert in the field of leadership. You have your own Life Brave podcast. You interviewed many of the maker and shakers in the industry. You have worked with organizations such as NASA, Hathaway, Oracle, United Nations Foundation. You're also very much passionate about disabled people with mental health, and an ambassador for the United Nations. You have achieved a lot. I wanted to talk initially when I said I want to talk to Margie. I didn't realize this achievement you have. So whatever we try to give you as far as contributions, you have done too many things, and you've done too many good things to others as well. So for you to be able to serve humanity the way you serve humanity and making the world a better place, thank you. Thank you from me. Thank you from all of us students in leadership. So thank you and welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Leadership and Politics. You exhibited a level of bravery during this uncertain time, and that's what attracted me to bring you along so you can share the experience you had. Your beloved husband, Andrew, had contracted coronavirus at an early stage, but the way you as a leader approached it, you were transparent, you with your followers, you were transparent, you were open communication at all times, you exhibited empathy by actually seeking it without seeking it and giving it to others, and you were authentic. These kind of qualities and characteristics are very rare these days. And I want you to share initially. I know the podcast is not about this specific one, but there's something for us to learn and something for the listeners to learn. How you, a leader that preaches bravery and courage and make it happen, how did you deal with such situation where it's uncertain time, difficult times, personal times? How did you manage it?
Mm. Well, I guess it was when my husband contracted COVID-19. Yes, it was shocking. I felt overwhelmed in the beginning because the first day that he got the positive result, they did an X-ray and they thought that he had a lung infection and that the virus had got into his lungs, and they put him straight away on an antibiotic. So that made me kind of anxious that it was already advanced by the time he had gone to hospital and was admitted immediately at the hospital. So I felt pretty anxious, and I wasn't able to see him for 30 days, but I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that would be what lay ahead. But at the core of, I guess, I certainly wasn't thinking about how do I be a leader right now. That was just the last, and frankly, I hadn't really thought about it through a leadership lens until you're just saying this now. It was to me just such a personal experience, but I did connect with people straight away. One, because I wanted to enlist support. I wanted to just let people know in my network, and I didn't have the time or energy to reach out to people individually. So I just went online and shared it with Facebook on a Facebook Live. And I decided that the more people in my network that knew that could just frankly offer me support, send prayers, send well wishes, that would help me, that would help me be stronger, because I really believe in the power of emotional contagion for good and for bad, for better and for worse. And I believe that we are more resilient when we are connected to other people. And while there are obviously people in my broader network that I don't know personally, there's a lot of people I do know, and I was really lifted up by support. And I certainly wasn't trying to be brave. I wasn't trying to be anything. I was just sharing what was going on. And what was going on for me was I was feeling overwhelmed. I was feeling anxious. I was feeling incredibly vulnerable. I didn't know at that point what the future held. As it turns out, and I should just get to the end for everybody, my husband is well. He has fully recovered. I think if there's anything to, I guess, insights for others, it's that
Yes.
we are more resilient and we are stronger when we are connected to people around us. And you don't have to be connected to thousands of people or hundreds of people, but just even a few trusted people that we can lean on. There is such that old saying, a burden shared is a burden halved.
Yes.
Because when other people are able to reach out and say, you've got this, it's going to be okay, you'll get through this, I'm praying for you, or I'm sending love, or anything like that, that is enormously uplifting to the human spirit.
So basically connect with others, open-minded, just go all the way.
Yeah. And I think in that, and to if you break down what courage is, obviously I write and talk and speak a lot about living and leading with courage. And courage is action in the presence of fear. And it's laying our vulnerability on the line for the sake of something more important, and our pride on the line, and that fear of judgment. And as I shared those daily updates over that period, I was aware that I was appearing vulnerable. Some days I knew I wasn't looking my best, you know.
It's okay to be vulnerable.
And it wasn't about, oh, am I looking like I've got it together? It was like, this is what's going on for me. And I wanted people also, a lot of people were being informed about the virus too, because I was able to share what we were learning the whole time, and the medical treatment and everything else. And a lot of people found that really helpful. So that was an inadvertent sort of service I was able to provide that was never in my mind at the beginning. But after a while, a lot of people were asking questions, and I was able to answer questions from what I was learning from our own journey. So yeah, but I think looking at this through a larger lens, and for all of us, all of our lives have been upended by this pandemic. We've all been impacted in multiple ways, and some people far, far more severely than I was or my husband was. He's made a full recovery. We know that many, many people have lost loved ones, and many people have faced and are still facing enormous economic hardship. And so I'm just very mindful that we're all in this together in one way, shape or form. And I think we're able to weather life's storms better and emerge from them stronger and wiser, and with what we call post-traumatic growth.
Yes.
When we are connected to people around us, when we're able to look at these challenges and these struggles, these hardships, these heartaches, with a lens of through how we can use them for positive ends in a purposeful way. And for me, the day after Andrew was diagnosed, I sat down and I wrote in my journal, and I literally, my book, You've Got This, was due to come out like that week, which was so ironic. And I was supposed to be doing a whole book launch tour. And there I was in a quarantine at home because I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. And I just doubled down on all the things that I'd just written about and grounded myself in that, what I call self-certainty. Yes. When everything around us is so uncertain, and when there is so much outside of our control, and we feel like the rug's been pulled out from under us and the floor beneath the rug, that we really anchor ourselves to who we want to be, to those virtues, those attributes of who do I want to be in this time. Yes. And for the people I love, in the world, for me, for my 4 children, we couldn't all be together. We still haven't been. I still haven't seen 3 of my children because of just international travel restrictions. Mm-hmm. And so just being very, very deliberate and being grounded in calm and optimism and hope.
You have 3 kids.
I've 4 actually.
You have 4 kids. You have 3 boys and 1 girl, right?
I do.
And I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Is it Lachlan?
No, Lachlan. It's a
Scottish
name. Lachlan.
So Margie, Lachlan. Okay, I got it. So he's 22. You have Madeline, 21, Benjamin, 19, and Matthew, 17. Is that right? Am I the right ages? Now, living with the boys, do you think that shaped the way you are? Especially, I have a question also on Madeline as well.
Well, I grew up with, I should probably say, I grew up with 3 brothers and 3 sisters. Okay. I was the big sister of 7. So that probably shaped who I am more than having 3 sons. It would have shaped a lot how I raised my sons and my daughter. Even wanting to have a large family. I'm from a large family. And my husband and I always valued having a large family, chaotic and noisy as it is.
It's important to have a family, that especially a supporting family. How about Madeline? She's already of age, 21. Is she shaping after you? Does she see you as the role model? I mean, you're a role model to many.
Oh, I'd love her to sit here right now and chime in. I think she would probably say, yeah, I'm more like my mum than she's got a fiercely independent spirit. Yes. And she is bold and brave, and she is forging her own path, and she's perceptive and kind, and I would say she's more creative, artistically creative than me. She wants to work in television, and she's very funny, and would love to get a job, in the writer's room on a late night talk show for, Trevor Noah.
That's a talent. That's beautiful talent. That's a good thing. Let's go. Let's dive into what we need to talk about. So you have 5 books. Am I saying this right? You have Brave, Find Your Courage, Make Your Mark, Train the Brave, and you have the recent one, You've Got This. Did we miss anything?
No, you got I co-authored 2 other books, but I think let's just focus on the ones that I wrote entirely myself. So
these are bestsellers. And then You've Got This, as you mentioned, you wanted to launch and COVID attacked all of us. Yeah. Is that right? Is that literally what happened?
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, just the irony that the week that it was coming out, it launched on the 1st of April, 30th of March in USA, that I was actually wasn't able to leave my apartment, and my husband was in hospital with COVID. The world had closed down. My book launch, my book tour, well and truly had been cancelled. I think right now we are desperately in need of bold leadership, brave leaders, and who
Brave,
it's not
authentic,
about,
transparent, empathetic,
it's not about
compassionate.
them. It's not about them. It's
You,
about
us, the collective us, collective we.
and
It's
what we
not
can do.
what we can do. The question to you, you talked about self-doubt. I want to explore that a little bit because your message, I have two questions, follow-up questions on this. I want that what your insight, it's true, you're giving insight to leaders, this is the primary thing why we want your input. So leaders can improve and be better and be bold enough, authentic enough. But I want also not only Madeline, the age of Madeline, listening to you. What is your message to them? How do we break that cycle of you can do it, regardless if you're a male or female? And then after you answer me, I have a follow-up on you've got this.
Yeah. Look, yes, obviously being female, being male, our gender can impact how we see ourselves, the expectations we have for the future, and also the barriers that we might face. And that depends obviously on the environment and the context we're operating in.
Yes.
And I know that's something that's around the gender differences around power and leadership is something I'm really interested in as a woman who grew up with zero role models for inspiring female leaders. And I never even vaguely saw myself as one. So you're having a daughter. I absolutely, just all my sons, you're here to make a mark. No one else can. You need to take ownership of the future that you want to create. You have a responsibility to be engaged and proactive in the world that you're operating in, whatever communities you're in. And you have a vital contribution to bring. And I think that for everybody, but I certainly say that to my children, and that will take courage. And sometimes you'll make mistakes, and sometimes things won't go the way you want, and you'll get knocked down.
It's okay.
But don't let that define you. Do not let your circumstances define you. Do not let an event or a failure or a misstep define you. You define yourself.
Wonderful.
But to leaders right now, to anyone in a supervisory role, and frankly, to anyone who's not and who might think, well, I'm not a leader, I would say to them, I challenge you to redefine your definition, your idea of what it is to be a leader. Because I think every one of us, I don't have thousands of people reporting to me. I don't have a corner office, but I think all of us can step up to the leadership plate. And the more we act like a leader, the more we act like the kind of leader we wish we had, or the kind of leaders we wish we had, the more others will come to see us that way. And so we have to train our environment. If you don't see yourself as a leader, or you're not in a position of leadership, to see you as someone who really utilizes your personal agency, your personal power. And by utilizing that, you grow power. But I think right now, those who are in positions of power or positions of authority, they have such a big responsibility to be building bridges, to be fostering understanding, to be engaging in civil, respectful dialogue and debate. The best solutions, the best answers do not come from everyone thinking alike. We need different voices. We need different political ideologies. We need different opinions. We need different strengths. We need all of that, but then we need to have robust dialogue and debate, and then move forward on that basis, because no one has a monopoly on the best way forward. And anyone who thinks they do is actually very biased, and is actually going to undermine the outcomes, the actions that will occur, and what happens for others.
It's proven. That's very well said. It's proven heterogeneous societies or cultures or environments, they produce better results than homogeneous environments. So when you have diversity, you tap into all the assets of all people involved. Very well done. And said, we're going to talk about how do you yourself, or do you advise others to talk positively to themselves so they will remove any self-doubts?
when I've told you how to remove all when I figured out how to remove all self-doubts, I'll let you know.
Okay.
I actually
Is it
think
possible
that is,
though? Is there such a technique?
I think that that inner roommate in our head, it never goes away. So that inner critic that can have the doubts, I don't think it's possible to have it fully go away if we're just fully engaged in the world. Those voices will come up. The question is, how can we live from a very powerful, masterful place that those voices of doubt, of fear, of judgment aren't the ones calling the shots. They're not sitting in the driver's seat, that we're actually operating from a higher place that is not driven by fear, but is driven from a sense of service, of purpose, of mission, and of faith in ourselves. And that's why in You've Got This, I have a whole chapter on, walk the path of faith and not fear. Choose faith over fear. And that doesn't mean that the voices don't come up. I really try and operate from faith and not fear, but I have fear come up. I have doubts come up. I have misgivings come up. But I think what we can do is, one, recognize those voices in our head are not who we are. They are that eternal chatter that's just ever present. And sometimes it's not necessarily negative. Sometimes it's just, it's warm outside.
It's
but,
reminders.
But to notice that, to cultivate that sense of mindfulness, to cultivate that inner observer, observing what you're observing what you're telling yourself, then being able to step back and challenge it and go, how do I know that I'm not good enough? How do I know that I'm not experienced enough to do that job? To actively look for evidence that refutes the doubts that we too often buy into. Play it forward. If I let that doubt that I'm not good enough, not experienced enough, or I'm not charismatic enough to be a leader, whatever, where will my life be a year from now, 5 years from now?
So that's a positive thought.
Yeah, but also, what's the price I pay for letting doubt call the shots? And then what would I do if I didn't believe that thought? What would be possible? And if I didn't believe that I wasn't experienced enough or smart enough to be a leader or charismatic, or I had to be a certain way, I had to look like this person or whatever, what would be possible for me? And in the absence of the doubt, we often can access the potential, the power that we have, the possibilities that excite us the most. And so many, many times I have taken action in the presence of the doubt. I'm like, I know, I'm worried that I'm not good enough, I'm not skilled enough to write a good book. I'm going to dare to write this anyway, because I don't want to look back when I'm 100 and go, you know what, you had that book in you, but you were too scared to try because you were too scared that people would say, hey, you're a lousy author.
You bring a very good point. Point is, people are afraid to talk, to speak up, due to sometimes internal. How about in external factors that may play onto these individuals for them to speak up? Either punishment, demotion, or some other elements that will they will get involved and say, okay, if we speak up here in front of this manager or leader, we're going to be demoted. He's not going to like us. When you speak up, the question is why people don't speak up in meetings or an idea. You have an idea, you just don't speak up. You don't raise your hand anymore. How can you, based on your advice and insight, how can you reach these individuals and say, "Hey, speak up. I know the potential of things and consequences, but at the moment of when you're not speaking up, what can you tell them? What can you tell them? Especially the fear. There is fear.
Yeah.
Punishment.
Look, and sometimes that fear is valid and legitimate. So we know that there are environments. I work a lot with large organizations, and some of those organizations have excellent managers and leaders, and some of them aren't. Some of them are insecure and they don't like to be challenged. And I've witnessed that. And so in those organizations where leaders can lead in a way, very command and control, and there is not that psychological safety to speak up, people have good reason to be afraid of the threat, then of course they can justify that. I would say to those people, can you thrive in that environment? And if you can't thrive in that environment, think about making plans to leave that environment and find a culture, an organization that you can thrive in. But sometimes it is just fear. It's like, you could speak up, but you're afraid to because you don't want to be humiliated. You don't want to be rejected. There is a risk. You mightn't, what you say mightn't come out of your mouth the right way. And I think our value, our greatest value, comes from expressing our opinions, and not just the same opinion as everybody else. Actually, the value lays in the difference of opinion. If all I do is say, oh yes, to what everyone else has said, there's not much value in that. And so know that your greatest value comes from expressing your opinion and perspectives, but doing so in a way that respects everybody else's.
Yes.
I mean, you might write to theirs.
Yes.
So it's not about speaking up in ways that are derisive or arrogant, or don't treat other people with respect. Rather, it's about ensuring that you're honoring your own difference of opinion and bringing the value that you have to bring to this group to bear. And that requires speaking up. If everyone's thinking alike, someone's not thinking, said General Patton. So I would just say to people, my experience is those who are willing to speak up and can do so in respectful ways. But sometimes there's ways you go about that to mitigate the downside. So maybe you have a one-on-one with someone rather than challenge them in a whole big group. So you have to be perceptive and use your emotional intelligence about what's the best way to go about this.
What's your favorite color?
I think I'd have to say red.
Red. Okay, I'm not going to ask you why. I'm just going to continue. What's your favorite
Just bold.
book? Bold, yeah, exactly. What's your favorite book? In addition to your books.
The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer.
Good book. Author? Favorite author? Same could be?
Oh, no, I'll say, well, nonfiction, I would say Wayne Dyer.
And favorite sport, and then with favorite guest on your show.
Equestrian show jumping.
Show jumping. And then your favorite guest. I don't know if you can choose one, but someone you enjoy talking to on your show.
Marianne Williamson.
The candidate, U.S. candidate for president. Yeah,
I've had her on my podcast twice, and she's been great.
She's a cool lady. She's a cool lady. Unfortunately, she didn't make it, but she made a difference. Definitely, that's one thing for sure. Last one. What's your legacy? Okay, you talked about what others want to do. What does Margie want to leave behind? What do you want to be remembered as?
I left behind a better world because I helped create a braver world.
Create a braver world. And the way we do that is by speaking truth with power, being brave, courageous.
Having faith in ourselves, and having faith that we're all here for a purpose, and we were all made for something bigger than ourselves.
Yes. Any last word to female leaders out there?
I would just say embrace your difference, own your value, and don't wait until you're ready before you step up, speak up, put your hand up.
Speak up and move on. Then the world needs you, we need you, as you complement us. It's true. I'm a believer in this. I believe women, they complement men leadership. Unfortunately, they don't have equity at this time. There's no equity in the distribution of power. With people like you, Margie, this thing will change, will happen, and you're creating another generation of powerful females that hopefully will take the helm and the world is better. Look what's happening in New Zealand. We have a person in common. I admire her very much, and I'm sure you do have the same thing. People in power, female in power, they do make a difference, and we hope we have more people like you.
Well, thank you very much for your support. When we have people around us like you who are championing us, it just makes us feel all the bolder and braver in who we can be in the world. So thank you.
We complement each other. I do thank you for your time, and have a pleasant day.
Thank you.